Hey guys, King of Charmanders here. Alright, so today we're going to analyze the fighters for the Holiday Cup. Now, what I basically mean are how a fighter archetype is basically coined. They either do primarily like fighting type damage. For example, their primary use is that of using a fighting fast move, which is primarily known as pretty much counter users. So the general synopsis of the fighter archetype is they do primarily fighting type damage. This is why a Pokemon like Chestnut isn't really classified as a fighter, because yes, it is a fighting Pokemon, however, its main purpose isn't to do counter damage. Because of superpower, technically it can be, however, again, usually fighters are coined with counter, or they have counter as a fast move. Other than that, they're not really a fighter. Rock Smash is such a horrible move that the only viable move is counter, and for good reason. Counter overall is one of the most powerful moves. Actually, it's one of the two most powerful moves in the game because of its overall usage. It's a 2-turn move, it gives you 7 energy, and it does a decent chunk of damage. Combine all those elements, overall counter is the best fast move in the game, as far as overall speaking. Pure damage goes to Dragon Breath. Now, as I mentioned, counter is used by many Pokemon. One of them are the two in the Holiday Cup. The primary ones are Vigaroth and Obstagoon. We're going to take a look and wonder why these two fighters are so dominant in Go Battle League's Holiday Cup. I'm going to start with Vigaroth. So Vigaroth is really good for one of two reasons. Vigaroth can actually beat Wigglytuff as one, and two, it also sports the powerful move of Body Slam. Vigaroth also has the added bonus of, since it's all pure normal type Pokemon, it does resist ghosts. Because of that, Shadow Bone, Shadow Balls, etc., it does resist those moves. So because of that, Vigaroth, even though it's not technically strong against ghosts, because ghosts are double resist fighting, Vigaroth can still do a decent chunk of damage, and if you can line a Bulldoze on some ghost types, it does heavy damage and can possibly KO at certain ranges. Because of Vigaroth's coverage, it is the most powerful safe switch in Holiday Cup, and it's also one of two powerful fighters. Now, of course, one of Vigaroth's main weakness is that, of course, it's weak to other fighters. Along with that is that if you switch your Vigaroth into a Vigaroth with Energy Lead, you will lose that matchup. So the thing about Viggy, I nicknamed Viggy for Viggy. Another thing that does limit it compared to Obstagoon is that Obstagoon is able to cover ghost types because it is a dark type. Ironically, Vigaroth is the hardest counter to Obstagoon, which I'm going to cover next, because Obstagoon's typing is double weak to fighting. So, as you see here, Vigaroth is weak to fighting, however, at the same time, like I mentioned, the reason why it's really good is because of its Body Slam / Bulldoze counter damage, plus counter. With it, it's one of the spammiest Pokemon. Along with that, like I mentioned, Bulldoze can do some coverage against Thunder and against Fire types. So Alola Marowak and those Stunfists will take heavy damage from Bulldoze. So because of Viggy's coverage, as well as its only literal weakness being like other fighters, that seems to be the case. However, Vigaroth is also weak to the Drifblim strategy. If you see Drifblim does resist both normal and ground types because it is a ghost and flying type. So Vigaroth has the added weakness of being kind of vulnerable to this strategy of getting locked into a Drifblim and Drifblim just icy winding you down. You do such little damage to Drifblim, your only hope is to chip away at it, to wait the Sludge clones out, or just completely sacrifice Viggy if you're locked into it. Those are two of Viggy's greatest weaknesses. However, its greatest strength is, like I mentioned, it can beat Wigglytuff. Body Slam does do heavy damage. If they don't have a hard counter against Vigaroth, Vigaroth is going to go to town because it's going to spam you and it's going to deal heavy damage. And thus, Vigaroth is an incredibly powerful safe switch, and that's why Vigaroth is one of the two most powerful, well, one of two of only fighters in the Holiday Cup. The second is Obstagoon. Welcome to Kiss's version of Pokemon, which is this heavy metal amazing fighter that has been literally, since it got released, one of the strongest Pokemon, or one of the most popular Pokemon to use in Go Battle League as a fighter. Now again, the reason it's a fighter is because it has counter, but the reason it is so powerful is because Obstagoon's coverage. Obstagoon has counter Hyper Beam, counter Night Slash, counter Gunshot. It has the ability to one-shot Charmers if you can land a Gunk Shot. It has the ability to counter other Ghost types with Night Slash. Arguably it's a harder counter to Ghost types than would be things like Frost, than its cousin Vigaroth. And it overall is, if it gets the boost, you can pretty much bank that this thing is going to deal heavy damage with its Night Slashes or its Cross Chops. Because of its coverage and its abilities, it's extremely powerful for the Holiday Cup. And there has been strategies where you use both fighters, and Obstagoon's Night Slash, if it does boost, it does such heavy damage, it's ridiculous. So Obstagoon's biggest weakness, it is a dark and normal type. Now that does have its advantages. As you see, you do resist Ghost ×2, so you triple resist Ghost. So if someone does put in a Alolan Marowak with Hex against you, they're probably going to switch out because they're going to do almost near 0 damage against you. You also resist Psychic and other dark types. So other things like Mandabuzz's Foul Plays aren't going to do much against you. Also the Foul Plays from Shiftry, not going to do much against you at all. The biggest ifs about Obstagoon is one of two reasons. One, it's double weak to fighting, as you see here, because it's normal and dark type. So other Obstagoons and Vigoroths, if it can actually punch each other down, which is just funny if you get the mirror. Or if you get Vigoroth and you throw it into Obstagoon, Vigoroth can farm down an Obstagoon in the perfect scenario. As you see, its second weakness is it's also weak to Charm. So because it's also really weak to Charm, it can't actually counter like Wigglytuff. It will take super effective damage, and unless you Gunk Shot Fairies to Oblivion, you're not going to come to that matchup without losing Obstagoon. However, the added bonus to Obstagoon's strengths is that it does have strong coverage against Ghost types, and if they don't have a Vigoroth on their team, you can use that strong coverage, and the boost with Night Slash is very, very difficult, especially if they do get the boost, to come back out of it. Its resistances do have a play in the meta as well. For example, if you get locked into a Mandibuzz, you're going to do really, really well, especially since you have coverage with like Cross Chop. Because of Cross Chop, Obstagoon also can threaten Vigoroth, because Vigoroth doesn't have a fighting move unless it's fast move to counter Obstagoon. As you see, both have its pros and cons. However, both of them are generally very popular and very powerful. So a lot of teams have featured double counter users, and they have seen lots of success just because of the strengths that I mentioned before. Vigoroth and Obstagoon can outpace your opponent, they charge quickly with a counter, and their charge moves are just so dangerous if they land or if you don't have shields, or if they even have energy lead. So I'm not going to go too in-depth on the rankings for each one. However, as you see here, Vigoroth and Obstagoon are of the top 5 Pokemon. They're just that freaking good. So a good key thing to note is that in this, you see in the circle of of the top 5 Pokemon, Vigoroth beats Wigglytuff, Wigglytuff beats Obstagoon, Obstagoon beats Alolan Graveler, also Obstagoon can beat Frostless. You see how it kind of comes together like that? So Obstagoon, the strength, there's a reason why Vigoroth and Obstagoon are so powerful together. It's because, like I mentioned before, they just synergize really well, and they outpace a lot of the meta. Not only that, they're of the top 5 picks of the Holiday Cup rankings. As you see here, Vigoroth ranks overall number 1. It's one of the most powerful safe switches. Leading with it isn't a bad idea, because if you get an Obstagoon lead, it's going to suck for them because you can punch them to death. If you lead a Graveler, it's going to do heavy damage because Alolan Graveler is not the thickest boy around. You can even beat Stunfisk. Lapras, you're going to beat Ice types, of course, and Abomasnow. Now, the thing is, you can beat Wigglytuff, so in a certain scenario, as you see here, yes, you lose to Wiggly. However, Wiggly, as you see here, you can win in the 0s or in the 1s if you have shield advantage. I do believe there's kind of a, bulk point here as well. Like, if you have let's see, if you have, I think there's something like, if you have, a high IV one, you can do more damage, so if you do that, if there's a higher attack, I don't know, let's see. There is an attack bulk point here, so I think one of my friends mentioned it to me before. Is it a 15 attack bulk point? No, so yeah, there's a bulk point here somewhere. So counter damage, if you're at 15, as you see, counter does 9 damage. I think it's what, 8 or 8. Okay, so 8. Let's see. Ah, here it is. Okay, I think I found it. Okay, so at 8, 10, 15, so the minimum is, let's see, 5. So as you see here, if you have a minimum of, I would say, 8 attack, I think it's 8, 10, 14, as you see here, you can beat Wigglytuff in the 1 shield. So there's a way to flip it. You're not going to win the 2 shield, however, as you see in the 1 shield, you can take out Wigglytuff. And if Wigglytuff has chip damage anyways, you'll still beat it, even if you don't have one with these IVs. For example, if you have a good IV one at level 40, that's your good IV. If you have a rank 1 Vigaroth, as long as Wigglytuff has chip damage, you can beat it. So let's give an example. Let's see if Wigglytuff's HP, let's say, is like 180 because you did more damage to it, and then you sent in Vigaroth to end its life. As you see, you'll win all shield scenarios. So as long as Wiggy has chip damage, you can take it out with Vigaroth. And that's why Vigaroth is so powerful. It beats the other fighter, and it just, because of Body Slam and its ability to do neutral damage to Wigglytuff, it's really good. Now, Obstagoon is kind of the same story. It does really well, and it covers everything I mentioned before. It can cover Vigaroth. Not really cover Vigaroth, but if you hit it with a cross chop, it's going to suck. So, and that's why Obstagoon can kill Vigaroth, just because of cross chop. And if it has energy lead. Obstagoon does lose to Wigglytuff this year, however, Obstagoon does take out Alola Marowak, Graveler, Frostus, Abomasnow, and Lapras. Because of its coverage with Alola Marowak and Frostus, it's not a bad idea to have both Obstagoon and Vigaroth together. You have double coverage, they're extremely powerful, and if Obstagoon does boost, it's a monster. So that's why this strategy works so well. As you see, they rank on the top 3, and fighters literally run this meta. Not really run the meta per se, however, because the meta is so diverse, these three work so well because they're so strong against the overall meta. That's why overall, Vigaroth is number 1, and Obstagoon is number 3. Alright, here's the pppoke.com rankings. Again, if you would like to consider donating to pppoke.com, please do so. As you see here, Vigaroth, I also put all versions of Obstagoon. I'm going to run through the matrix really quickly. I've already made individual videos on each mon, so we're not going to go really in-depth into it. I'm just going to show how each one cover each other really well, and why one is better than the other. Now, Obstagoon does have options. You don't have to run Cross Chop. You can run Gun Shock. You can run Hyper Beam. Night Slash is your primary source of damage. However, it's preferred to run Cross Chop to cover Ice types, etc., as well as Vigaroths. Now, as you see here, if we run the 2 shield, the meta right here, as you see, Obstagoon can actually beat Altaria. Vigaroth can beat Altaria in a 2 shield as well. So as you see, both are able to beat Altaria in a 2 shield. Obstagoon, because if you're able to bait, you have to double bait, and then you can boom, you can hyper beam. So you can actually hyper beam an Altaria to death. It's nuts, right? Yeah. But they have to double bait, so you have to double bait. It's not likely someone will do this, but in a funny scenario, you can actually take Altaria in a 2 shield as long as you have beam. Other words, Vigaroth is very strong even against flyers, because as you see here, Vigaroth in the 2 shields is actually able to take down Altaria. As you see, they complement and cover each other well, where Obstagoon, they also beat very similar things as fighters. For example, remember I was talking about Drifblim walling you? Well, guess what? Obstagoon actually beats Drifblim. Obstagoon beats the ghost types. That's what's nuts about it. Now, you're not going to like Galvantula because Galvantula does resist your counters. However, you can body slam a Galvantula to death or cross chop it or night slash it to death at certain ranges. As you see here, Obstagoon, as I mentioned, covers the Alola Marowak matchup, where Vigaroth covers everything else. Lanturns, Laprases, Magnezones, Manabuzz, and it can even beat Alola Marowak if it's down shields. Now, as the funny thing is, of course, it's going to be simultaneous knockout if you put Obstagoon, but Vigaroth covers Obstagoon. As you see here in the 2 shield, both complement each other very well, with their biggest weaknesses being Charmers. However, like I mentioned before, in the 2 shield, or in certain shield scenarios, Vigaroth can actually take out Wigglytuff. So that's the 2 shield. As you see, both are very powerful. This is why you see a lot of Vigaroths or Obstagoon in the leads, or you see these double counter fighters users, because they actually complement each other very, very well. Now, in the 1 shield, things get a little funnier. Well, you actually beat down some stuff that way. So you'll both beat Abomasnow. As you see, you can beat Altaria. You can body slam Altaria in the 2s, but not in the 1 shield. You also beat Shadow Aerodactyl with both. You beat Dugong and Diggersby. Now, in the 1 shield, it gets kind of dicey. As you see, Drifblim can beat both versions as long as it's able to chunk you down with those icy winds. Frostus, however, can still be covered by Obstagoon. So unless you have energy advantage with Frostless, Obstagoon is still going to win that matchup cleanly. It's even worse if you're, well, it's good for you if you're using the Obstagoon, but if you have energy lead with Frostless, you're just going to Night Slash it to death. As you see here, Obstagoon cannot take down its Sparked Lantern, however, Vigaroth can. You can take it down with both versions, as long as you have the Cross Shot version, as you see here. Well, actually, you can take down the water gun version, so that's a mistake. As long as you have that. As long as you have the cross-chop version, you can take it out. Well, that's the water gun version, so you can beat both the water gun. You just can't beat it with... You can't beat the spark one with Obstagoon and Night Slash. As you see, Obstagoon beats Manibuzz and the Alolan Marowak, while Vigaroth does not in the ones. Obstagoon covers the matchup against other Vigaroth covers the Obstagoon, of course, or you just die in the mirror. Both will beat Alolan Sandslash, and this is where it gets kind of dicey, because in the one shield is where you will lose even harder against Charmers, as well as Flyers. Flyers do have a good time with you if you're down 2 shields. Well, if you're in the one shield scenario, so yeah. But you both beat Snorlax. You can also beat Stunfisk with Vigaroth in the ones, as long as you can land that Bulldoze. The no shield, as you see here, the no shield, they have a lot of fun. In the no shield, as you see here, Vigaroth's able to body slam a lot of things to death, and Obstagoon's able to cross chop a lot of things to death. So you see Obstagoon's able to be Driplim, Frostlets, it's able to be AWAC, where Vigaroth does not. See why these two are such a great pair together? They cover each other well, they deal obscene amounts of damage, and they outpace a lot of the meta. Obstagoon has the chance to boost, and Vigaroth can take out what Obstagoon can, as long as it has energy lead. So it can take out Alolan Marowak. You can also take out Frostless as long as you get that Bulldoze off or has chip damage. Otherwise, Obstagoon can take it out. This coverage is what makes it nuts. Also, the funny thing is, Vigaroth can actually beat Whimsicott and Wigglytuff in the zeros because of Body Slam. Of course, Optigoon cannot because it's going to get charmed down. However, in this case, Vigaroth is able to cover Obstagoon. Now, if you have shield advantage... versus your opponent, it's a bad time. As you see, in the one shield, or the 1-0s, Vigaroth beats the entire meta with the exception of Frostless and Drifblim, because Frostless and Drifblim do resist it, especially Drifblim. However, Obstagoon does cover it. As you see here, these coverages are nuts. Vigaroth covers Obstagoon, etc. Keep Vigaroth, well, you're gonna commonly just keep your Obstagoon away from Charmers, and if you do and you lock them into your Vigaroth, as you see here, Vigaroth does beat them, especially in the 1-0s. The 2-0s, you're basically unstoppable. As you see here in the 2-0s, the only thing that stops you is Obstagoon's Charm. And against Vigaroth, the only thing that stops you is Dripblim. So, you literally beat a ton of things with this pair. Especially Vigaroth. Vigaroth with 2 shields can kill a majority of everything, like I said, except for Drifblim. And if you need to, you have Obstagoon cover Drifblim. The 2-1s, same story. Still a very dicey situation for your opponent. At this time, you'll win against Whimsicott and Wigglytuff a lot harder, and you lose against all basically it's Charmers, okay? You lose against Charmers, or Vigaroth loses against Drifblim or Frostless. Other than that, Obstagoon can cover everything else that Vigaroth's weak to perfectly fine. That's why both of them are so good together. Yes, you're gonna lose against Charmers, but you know what? It's the way. Charmer 2 shield strat is very strong, and that's why Charmers are super oppressive. And if you haven't seen a Wigglytuff, you are very lucky, because I've seen so many in the lead or just in the closing matchups, and the Wiggly 2 shield strat or the Charmer 2 shield strat is so prevalent in this meta. Alright, so in the summary, which one of them is better? The answer is neither of them. Well, it's a tie actually. So the thing about Vigaroth and Obstagoon, they are so powerful. Yes, Vigaroth overall does take down Obstagoon only because it can take down Charmers. That's why Vigaroth is placed so high. Vigaroth can also spam a majority of the meta with the Body Slam. However, Obstagoon can take out what Vigaroth cannot. They cover each other very well, so it's a very situational type of deal. That's why both of them are technically tied. With counter, here's what you get with fighters. If you have energy, or if you don't even have energy lead, you can outpace a lot of things. Obstagoon's boost, as I mentioned before, can flip matchups because of the extra counter damage, and because if you rack up 2 boosts, it's pretty much game over. You practically won unless you're locked into a Charmer. So 2 boosts or even 1 boost can flip matchups and get you the W. Vigaroth, on the other hand, does have coverage moves in Bulldoze, and like I said, it can beat Wigglytuff. It can also beat other Charmers. Both have their cons, both have their pros, and that's why both of them are tied with each other. And that's why they work so well in a team together. If you put Vigaroth and Obstagoon together, it is actually a very high-rated team, for reasons like I mentioned in this video. But Double Fighters is, like, as you see, the premier team I've seen is Frostless Double Fighter. I believe that's one of the #1 leaderboards teams. My name's Judge John. But as you see here, if you just put these two together, look at the safety and consistency. You're super safe against the meta, and you're very consistent, just with these two alone. So that's why they're so good. Your biggest threats, of course, well, this is actually against... Well, hold on, give me 1 second. That's like all Pokemon. Yeah, I made a mistake. I oops. Okay. Ignore what I said for the past 2 minutes. Generally the same, but as you see, safer and consistent. Generally the same thing. They're very safe and consistent. Both of these things together can cover each other very well. And if you see your threats, you're literally, it's just Flyers and Charmers. Flyers and Charmers. So you could put Vigaroth in the lead, or you could put something in the lead and just have these two against each other. And a lot of people have actually made rank 24 Battle Legend with this double fighter team. As you see here, your only problems are flying types. Flying types and Charmers. If you can get rid of both of these, or get rid of one, the other can cover for you. So this team is still very, very good, as I mentioned. Like I mentioned, if you look at their comparisons against the overall meta, as you see, they complement each other very well. Some of the meta you can actually beat together. However, as you see, look at that coverage. Again, your only problem are Charmers and Flyers. If you can take out the Charmer, you can take out the Flyer, Obstagoon and Vigoroth will run rampant. So that's why they are so good. In the future, if you are considering using a fighters team, Vigoroth is also a very good safe switch in regular GBL as well. Obstagoon as well. So both of these are still really good at Open Greatly, and you can see why. In a condensed meta, in this condensed meta, these two are just so strong that they've dominated and have actually achieved Battle Legend thanks to some great battlers using them. Again, I hope you guys liked this video. If you liked and enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. This is why the fighter archetype is so dominant, though, as you see here. Vigoroth and Optigoon have great coverage against the overall meta, because depending on how the meta flops, the discouragement of Charmers and Flyers because of Charms, etc., or just like realignment, these two are very good, cover each other very well. Even one covers a lot of the meta well. That's why a lot of people opt to use Obstagoon versus Vigoroth, because Obstagoon can cover Frostless, Alolan Marowak, and Drifblim. Vigoroth cannot. However, Vigoroth can take out your Charmers. Vigoroth can also straight up body slam so many things to death, and Bulldoze can take out Alolan Marowak and the Electric types. Again, they're tied. Both of them cover a specific set of Pokemon, but that's the reason why they're so good in this meta. They cover a majority of the meta, each specific one, and specific archetypes. And with energy, with the most powerful fast move overall, with the exception of sheer damage, which goes to Dragon Breath, counter is a very powerful move. I hope y'all enjoyed this fighter video. Good luck on your Go Battle League sets, and I will see you on the next video.